question.
Oh, that book?
Yeah.
Oh, love that book. I love that book.
All right, I tried to
And
get
it gave you a real appreciation of what they really went through.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Being a spy was not an easy job.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. I don't know if any more people are coming, either in person or Google Meeting it, but we are certainly here now.
Toshi, like I said, will be in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, I really liked this book. As is my usual format, I started reading it just a couple days ago, and I could not put it down. And I really liked the characters and everything else. Hi!
Well, hi.
Come on in!
Thank you.
We just got started, but not really.
Enthusiasm.
All right.
My goodness.
All right.
Those two.
No, sit.
I thought, sit, stay.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, oh, yeah.
We don't have anybody on Google Meets yet, but we're hoping. We're also on the Facebook page.
okay.
I think my mom is coming either in person or Google Meeting it. I don't actually know though. So, Miss Marion, you recommended this book. Why did you recommend it?
Well, I was just telling her that it gave a good picture of what was actually going on with the spies, that it wasn't a posh job or a safe job, and there was always, and also I thought, and other than the other books that we've read where there was a contemporary person and a historical person, they were better related. The stories were better related, and so they tied in better, so I didn't mind the interruptions as much. And I really like the ending.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I
okay.
only went a quarter of the book.
I really like the ending.
Oh, okay. All right. I looked for some discussion questions. There were some in the book. I didn't really like those, so I made up my own.
Good for you.
I got some of the ones from the book, but just to start off, what was your experience of reading the book? What did you like, dislike? How did you feel about the two-character perspective and time skips? I know, Marion, you said you thought that aspect was handled well. Hi! Come on in!
Howdy do? Yeah, let me move one of these.
Here, why don't you come sit here?
How y'all doing?
Pretty good. As well as we deserve. Maybe better.
Okay. Am I late? I hope
No,
I'm not.
right on
You
time.
are not at all late.
We were just getting started.
Just getting started. So,
Yeah,
Hey, victory is yours.
clash one.
But it worked.
Any land and you walk away.
Yeah, that's what my husband always said.
the first question I asked was, what was your experience reading this book? What did you like or dislike? How did you feel about the two-character perspective and time skips, and the parallels between young Eve and Charlie?
I'll go ahead because I did. This was a 19-hour book and I got down to 8 hours. I don't know how it ended. I mean, it's pretty easy to guess how it ended. Yeah. But I thought the first thing that struck me when I read the book jacket was it was written on the same technique and the same template, so to speak, same plot construction as the one we read on Apothecary, that Apothecary book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had the same,
Yeah.
they had two different people. It was almost like two novels, you know, that was,
But
and in the Apothecary one, I thought the one written with the lady making drug potion. I thought that was excellent. And I didn't like the woman going to England and making a mystery out of it. And the peril, I didn't like, I thought that wasn't well written. I thought the first one was worthy of a prize. Same thing with this one. I thought Charlie, when I first heard the first couple of hours, I texted a friend. I said, I love this book. And I don't love many books. There are a lot of books I respect, a lot of books I admire, but the way it was written, the characters, the humor, the insight, she's really a good writer. And she set the characters up kind of mysterious and all kind of unique. And she had the backstory, getting pregnant and all that. And what I didn't like about it is Eve's story. You know, and that you jump back out of real time, but you're having a different novel in a different setting, in a different time. And it just, and you've already got Eve in your mind as this crotchety old woman that's very accomplished and dangerous and weird. And yet, now she goes back, she's a little girl almost, and she's innocent, and she gets into the spy, and she stutters, and everybody's parents made monsters out of them. I've noticed that in every book I read, the parents make monsters. The same thing in that Crawdad book. Remember the girl's father? You know, so anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I thought, and then later on, as far as the writing goes, she stayed a little too long to me with this angst over Rose. You know, it was already stated and displayed how torn up she was, but she kept going back to it, Oh, Rose, I see you in everybody that walks by. So that was a little too much. But other than that, I just thought she was a real good writer, and I just wish she'd stayed with Charlie and forgotten Eve, just the way the Apothecary book. I wish they'd stayed with the 1700s and not going to the girl looking for her husband or betrayed her husband or whatever that silly stuff was.
Well, see, I'm opposite. I like this one better than the Apothecary. To me, the linkage made more sense.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'd go with the Apothecary. I mean, this one, because it's in real time. What was good about the drug murderer, I don't know what to call it, the woman. Well, it was in 1700s. You know, I can relate to 1947. I had a little trouble. I mean, I enjoyed it and I got into it and I appreciated it, but just from a standpoint of the heart, you know. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize for it.
well, but I think, and then if you had stayed with the end, you would have understood Rose.
Well, I understand. Well, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah. I just didn't have enough time. I got it Saturday. I just didn't have.
Yeah. If you stayed with it to the end, you would have understood.
But I don't know. To me, I would rather have the novel be about Charlie and leave the backstory with Eve in the World War One's in another novel, or a sequel or a prequel or something.
That's just a trend, I think. You have to be going back and forth, and then it's sort of driving me crazy. You know, I want to skip over that middle chapter, you know, and just read the novel as about one person. But I think the trend will probably go away eventually.
I think I'm the only regular book clubber who really likes that.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, I liked it. I just didn't like.
Well, I mean, who likes that trend, that element of having two.
You like that
perspectives.
Yeah, two perspectives, especially
changed by time.
Especially when like 2/3 of the way through, then you find out, they're related or they're. But
you have to so carefully watch the dates.
Mm-hmm. You do.
You have 2 and 3 pages in and think, oh wait, no, we changed time here.
Yeah, that actually does. I really, really like this book. I started it a couple days ago. I could not put it down. But the one aspect of the two perspectives that I at first I had trouble with was I felt like the voice of Charlie and the voice of young Eve were too similar. I feel like if you're going to do the two perspectives, you have to make the voices really distinct so that you don't have to flip back to the front of the chapter and see who it is.
Yeah, they both kind of started off with the same
Yeah, but
innocence, quote unquote.
But then, as the story progressed, I could differentiate them more, and I could see that it was, it was more of an intentional parallel being drawn, that we meet Eve as an older woman, and then we see that when she was younger, she was, more like Charlie. She was shy. She was, very different person, and then kind of saw her progress. And so at first, I had bumped up against that a little bit. There was one other story element that I wasn't super wild about, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Were you familiar with any of the real historical events used in the story, like the Alice Network, Louise de Bettigny, or the Oradour-sur-Glane massacre? I'm sorry, I took one French class many years ago. I'm not going to pronounce any of this correctly.
I had heard of the Alice Network, but I'd heard of it. It was not a new concept to me. That it existed, but I didn't know any details.
So the massacre of the village was really it.
That really happened.
Oh, that's good to know, because I almost had trouble believing or suspending belief. I just couldn't imagine the Germans would go and kill a whole village for no particular reason, but even if the Renaissance guys were supposed to be there, the resistance guys. But then if it's a real event, I've got nothing to, that makes better sense.
There've been a lot of books, it seems to me, over the past decade or so, about the World War II history novels, historical fiction books. So that's basically the only way I got familiar with a whole lot of that was going on.
I know the Germans did had a little disciplinary action thing where if somebody did something, and they did this everywhere in Greece and France, everywhere. If somebody did something and they didn't come forward and say they did it, they'd line everybody up and pick one person out and shoot. And so that was supposed to be an incentive for somebody to give up. Half the time, nobody would say anything.
I think a lot of the World War II generation we're losing most of it. I think we've lost most of it already, and that those people or their sons or grandsons are concerned that story will be lost, and they don't want that. So I think that's why a lot of those things are coming out. A lot of nonfiction books about the Holocaust, they're coming out for that reason, and I think a lot of the other stories are too, for that reason, that families are afraid that
Just to add something, when I ordered this book, you're in good company, Leila, because when I order books, it always takes them 5 minutes to find it on the computer and all this stuff. And the guy said right off the bat, yeah, we got that book. So that's obviously a well-known book.
Oh yes, I think it was a popular book a couple years ago when it came out. So how do you feel about the way that these real historical events were used in the story? I know that you said that the massacre seemed implausible to you, but before you realized that was an actual historical event. I didn't know about the Oradour-sur-Glane massacre at all. Like, I knew that there had been a lot of atrocities and a lot of slaughters of whole villages, but not that one specifically. And I knew that there had been a lot of prominent, well, not prominent, the opposite of prominent, underground women's spy rings in World War I and II, but I didn't know about the Alice Network specifically, so that was interesting to me. Those aspects, and definitely I think the point that you made about as the people who remember it are lost to time, the historical records, people are working on making sure that the historical record is preserved. And if you, I cannot remember the person's name, but it was a real person, the woman who survived the massacre, that she testified in court against the officers who committed it, and everything in the story that she had said about what happened was taken from her real life testimony.
And I think she kind of made the point that I was making, is that she didn't want that story forgotten.
Right.
And so that's why all of these are coming out.
What do you think about the relationships between the characters as they developed? Such as Charlie and Eve, Eve and Lily, Eve and Violet, Charlie and Finn, Charlie and Rose, Charlie and James, Charlie and her parents. What did you think about any of those relationships?
Well, one thing that she did that they always, well, I learned it in short stories, but I guess it's true in all. They want to change. They want to change in the main character. There's supposed to be a change. There's something that's supposed to happen. Something's supposed to get accomplished or deaccomplished, or whatever it is. And in this one, it's like the mother. The first time we really see the mother, she finds Charlie in France. And now she's a real mother. She's concerned, and Charlie's amazed that she's showing love and concern. And then when she reneges on looking for the Rose and wants to take Charlie immediately back to America after she gets the abortion, then she reverts right back into the monster mother, the monster mother, I guess the term is. And those kind of things, it's like with Eve, when we first meet her, she's drunk, crazy, going to shoot everybody, yelling and screaming, and just complete psycho. And it turns out she's this ultra accomplished super actor, spy, everything under the sun that you could imagine. And so that the change happened there. And then, of course, Finn, he's very, very reserved and staid, and then slowly but surely he gets to be warm and loving and becomes Charlie's lover. I guess eventually that happens, I presume. So everything, she's good at making the changes of the characters, I thought. And the relationship between everybody, it's like a lot of times you meet somebody, you don't like them, but after you get to know them, then you like them pretty good, So it's just, she didn't like Eve at first, Charlie didn't like Eve, and she didn't know what to make of Finn, and all of them got closer as the time went on.
Some authors are just very good at that character development. Through the change to the reader too, we get to know them better.
And Eve not only was vulnerable, not only was she had the flaw of being the drunk and with the Luger and all that, and being so forceful, formidable, yet she also could get very vulnerable, like when they went to meet the other woman spy and had that confrontation, she almost fell over. She almost fainted or whatever. Charlie had to grab her and all that. And then another time she got real weak, for lack of a better word. So you got this balance. She balanced the characters pretty good with their strengths and weaknesses. You don't want to make them all evil, and you don't want to make them all good. You throw in a little of everything, I guess, to make an interesting character.
Well, Miss Katie, we haven't heard from you.
I didn't read it. I just perused a few pages.
Did you like what you read?
I thought that there was a big focus on the inner world of the females.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he left.
And,
Now I know what abortion's like.
yeah, their inner mental world.
Yeah, that was almost, of course, I'm a man. I could, I'm not really in that. It would feel more to a female, but yeah, it was definitely from a woman's point of view. And all the men, I noticed, Finn was in prison. Captain, what's his name, was in prison. All the men were, the Renee guy, he was a monster. All the men had these, all the women were vulnerable and they'd been hurt and oh God, they, raised bad and beat up and had to lose their virginity for the country and all the men were in jail. So anyway, war of the sexes.
Well, I didn't think that like Finn, I thought he was probably the most sympathetic of the male characters. And yeah, he had gone to prison, but he was a flawed person. But I thought he was a very sympathetic character.
Well, yeah, their prison sentences were justified, so you should justify. They got maligned, so to speak. The captain's looking out for his wife who wanted to have a baby or whatever her problem was. And Finn was just back from the war, and somebody smarted off to him. Well, what do you expect? It's like the football players. They expect the football players not to get in fights. That's what they're made for. That's what they do all day long. They're out there trying to kill each other. So, it's she balanced that. She balanced that thing. But I don't know. It was an interesting book. It was a very interesting book. She had good insight, and she had some great lines. Some of the last thing I heard was when names of the first to go. Eve was beating on the wall with the Luger, and Charlie goes over and talking, can you be a little softer? And there were just lines like that all through the thing that made me laugh, and especially the sarcasm from Eve, and the way she took over the pawn shop, this was a confident, assured woman. I don't care if she stays drunk or not. She wants to do the job. She had the character, so to speak, to do it. And Charlie's character developed. She went from just a little 18-year-old pregnant girl not knowing what the heck was going on, and then by the end of at least right when I got to it, she was a confident young woman.
I thought certainly the main characters had really interesting character development. Reproductivity and reproductive choice are central themes of the story. Lily chooses not to have children. Eve has a dangerous and illegal abortion, and Charlie resists being coerced into an abortion and chooses to have a baby. How do you feel about the way this was depicted? How did these women's reproductive choices or lack thereof impact their lives? Did you have any thoughts about the dangers associated with pregnancy in the first half of the 20th century?
Was that your question, or did you get it on the internet? Just
I
curious.
made it up.
Okay. Just curious.
Well, that's a good question, before 19, when I was in college in the late 70s, one of my sociology teachers did research on abortions. I don't think they were legal then. No, it was in the early 70s. And he interviewed a bunch of back alley abortion guys, and he did a paper on it and all this stuff. But yeah, it was when I was in high school, 4 girls got pregnant, and in Atlanta they had a home for unwed mothers, and that's where all 4 of them went there. And like, if you had, I remember Loretta Young, there was a story that she got pregnant, and she disappeared into Europe for a year. All that kind of thing. It was a taboo, and it was a shame thing, and it was a social ostracization, and now they get pregnant in high school, and they keep going to high school. They don't get married, and it's just everything is completely changed as far as the morals and the social taboos go. But I thought, the way Charlie handled it, it's like you hear these things on the radio where they got these charities where they get the girls have the sonogram, and once they see the baby, they change their mind. The more Charlie felt the baby inside her, the more you could kind of see her deciding that, and then of course the mother brought the issue to a head, and if the mind thinks in pictures, Charlie would say, who am I for, the baby or the mama? And she's been against the mama since the day she's born. So anyway, it was interesting. And about Eve, now you talk about a moral dilemma. What are you going to do? You want to fight for your country, or you want to, you're trying to end the war. And the guy's a pig. You sure don't really want to be in the same county with him. But you got to bite the bullet, and she bought the bullet, I guess, and went ahead and went to bed with him. And unfortunately, even though she took precautions, as luck would have it, So in one case, it was 2 moral dilemmas going on, and it was one solved it one way, and the other solved it the other way. But really, Eve didn't have a choice. She had to have the abortion. She didn't have a choice.
Well, and would you want a child? How would you feel about the child from a person like that? I guess that was really before genetics was a big thing, but nowadays.
Back then, most people.
No, the eugenics was huge.
Not eugenics, genetics.
But the idea that if the father or mother was quote unquote bad, the child would be was a very popular idea at the time.
Yeah, it was. It didn't take off.
That's the
It
thing.
did in Germany, but
It did in the U.S. also.
Well, it was here, but it wasn't pervasive.
It was.
I wasn't here, so I don't know. But it just seems to me that I think the general public, even in the 30s, it was left up to them to draw the line and say people can have babies if they want to have babies, because who's going to stop them? Now, who's going to stop them but the government? How do you stop somebody from wanting to have a baby?
Well,
Whether they're retarded or black or whatever the
in the 1930s, the U.S. did have forced sterilizations, and if you look up the Buck versus Bell Supreme Court case,
the mental patients and retards and all those
Native Americans.
Native Americans, disabled people, lots of people in the U.S.
Was that widespread or just occasional?
It was
Well, it
widespread.
was fairly widespread.
If you look up the Buck versus Bell Supreme Court case, it was very widespread.
Did they actually do it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Did they do it?
Yes.
Yes.
The way people have sex now that didn't have sex in the 40s, did they do it? I'm saying, did millions of people get sterilized? Or just a couple 100,000?
Yes.
At least, yes.
Oh, if over the course of of the early 20th century, yes, absolutely.
Millions?
I don't know the total numbers.
I just can't believe it was that widespread.
It was.
Well,
It
believe it or
was.
not,
Well, I just can't, I guess my moral.
it's the sort of thing that wasn't made public. It wasn't in the headlines of the news
And
when
it,
this happened.
and it,
No,
Well,
it kept quiet,
and
but they did.
Well,
it absolutely still
I think,
happens.
I can now agree with you, because I remember that Milledgeville State Hospital right here in Georgia had 17,000, count them, 17,000 patients. And a lot of those weren't mentally ill, it was a dumping ground. Not only for people that deformed, retarded, name it, anybody unusual, plus the families, if they didn't like somebody in the family, this happened all the time, they'd have them committed.
Yes.
They'd get a lawyer, they'd railroad them, and they're just as normal as you and I, quote unquote. And,
How sad.
and they, 17,000 people in one little, what a joke. So I guess you're right. I guess they
It
did.
just was not.
I guess
in the
they did
headlines.
go around snipping and yanking.
And it wasn't. It's not like they had the internet or whatever. Just those sharing
Social
things.
media.
Yeah, it's just this happened on the
That's
quiet.
a shame, I
It
guess.
just happened on the quiet.
And it does still happen. Not as prevalently as it did in the early 20th century, but it does absolutely still happen. So people should be aware of that. That aspect was interesting to me, and I remember reading years ago that before the 20th century, a woman's odds of dying in childbirth were higher than a man's odds of dying in war, which just shocked me. I looked into it a little bit more, and it's a little bit more complicated than that. It depends on the time period, it depends on the war, it depends on different places at different times had different levels of medical access.
Yeah, I was about to say the financial.
Well, financial, but also just like knowledge of washing your hands and stuff
Well,
like
I heard
that.
that the main reason that women live longer than men today is because before 1900 or the 1920s, a large percentage of women died in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
So the men and women, getting to 60 was about the same, but now because women survive childbirth and don't die, that's why women live for the percentages. That's what I heard anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Well, it may be that we see that women do it. May not be for cause.
Well, I used to go to graveyards, cemeteries. And
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Oh, I know.
I mean, I was in the statutory art for a while. And see some neat statues. But anyway,
Where is that?
Carving those, whatever they are. But you'd always see that. You see the big headstone and the little headstone and the mother and the, and it just went on forever. They were everywhere in those old cemeteries.
I love those things.
But yeah, so that was in my mind as I was reading this. And now this took place a little bit later, but a lot of the same themes were going on, especially like with Eve having an illegal abortion. People absolutely could die from that.
You betcha.
And
Well, if Charlie hadn't been going to Switzerland, it would be illegal in the U.S.
Yeah.
oh
So,
yeah,
so,
oh yeah, I
Oh, yeah,
know
and-
that continued that people.
Yeah, when
still-
I was in college, there was this girl that nearly died in my dorm.
Yeah, that also still happens.
Yeah, coat hangers.
I don't know, but
That's
it
the
was
one.
it was obviously an illegal.
That's the one I
abortion.
heard, the coat hanger, and that's not the way to do it, I would think.
Indeed.
That's the danger.
Take charge of your health and don't take medical advice from book club. Anyway, but yeah, I mean that a person at that time period in that situation would have had very little recourse And that I felt like that resonated. That for Eve to be pregnant in that situation, she could have died, she could have been killed, and it seemed sort of in keeping with everything that we read about what life was like in the occupied countries, that there was no safe option. If even if you were so inclined and thought, I'm just going to keep my head down, do what I'm told, stay out of trouble, that was not an option. You could still be hauled out of your house and shot for any reason or no reason, or you could become pregnant, or you could be raped. You could be there was no protecting yourself from the atrocities that were going on, and I thought that the situation that Eve was in really highlighted that. And then when we see Charlie, 30 years later dealing with an unplanned pregnancy, we see that she has more recourse, but still not a whole lot of recourse. Because as she points out, she's underage by the laws of the time. So if her parents wanted to force her to have an abortion, they legally would have had the right to do that.
Well, it was illegal here, but it was legal in Switzerland.
Right.
And that was a clinic as opposed to some guy in an alley.
Right. But it was not what she wanted. And so yeah, it would have been physically safer, but not what she wanted. And that was, as I mentioned, there was another aspect of the story that I didn't really like that much, and that was Charlie and Finn ending up together. Which I love a good romance. I love a love story. I love a happy ending. I love Charlie, so her, falling in love with a great guy and them being happy together is great. But I thought it would have been kind of narratively more powerful if she had just been a single mom.
Yeah.
If you're going the direction of she's going against her parents, going against society's norms, standing up and saying, I'm going to be a single mom and I don't care who judges me for it, then just let her be a single mom.
Well, in 47,
Well, people did.
I'm not sure there were any unmarried mothers running around as much.
There were some.
Yeah,
There were
most of
some.
them gave up their babies,
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with Leila that it would have been. I'm really tired of automatic romances.
Well, I can agree with it on the grounds that I couldn't really see Finn as a loving husband. I mean, he just didn't.
No.
He struck me like a bodyguard, gunslinger, or something like that. I just didn't see him all the warmth of a
No, I could see
loving
that.
husband. I just couldn't see him, especially with Charlie.
Yeah, I would have liked it better
I
if
could
they
see
had
more
just been
with
sort of
Eve
a father-daughter
than Charlie.
sort of, a father-daughter.
I could see Mary and Eve rather than
Yeah,
Charlie.
exactly.
The relationship with Charlie and Ben, I think, by the author doing it that way, it kind of gave some readers permission for Charlie to keep the baby.
Right, and that's what I didn't like, because it felt like a little bit cowardly on the writer's part to be like, oh, she's bravely taking her stand as a single mother, and then she gets married. It's like, just
Then there's a man,
yeah. It's
And she tried turning the tables on the standard procedure where Charlie's coming on and he's resisting her. And she's crawling all over him and he's not responding the way, a woman would do to an amorous man. And now all of a sudden it's the older amorous woman and the man's resisting. Of course, in this society, that's exactly what's happening.
I didn't like that part. For Charlie to be a sympathetic character, and for her to be that, violating of Finn in that scene, I thought it kind of diminished her as a sympathetic character.
And that justification thing again, in college, she did turn into a tramp. She was easy lay, quote unquote, and she was taking on everybody that came by, but yet she's justified. Her poor brother blew himself away. She's got these parents that are distant, you know, and so.
I didn't see that as justified, but I'm not sure it was framed as needing justification.
Well, she explained it.
She explained it. She explained that, you know, she was depressed after her brother died, and she was just kind of looking for any type of connection, but.
Like the old saying, psychiatrists explain the behavior and the lawyers get you out of it.
Well, she wasn't committing a crime at that point.
I think that was just a general statement. I don't think that really had anything to do with it.
Did anyone else have any thoughts about the reproductive aspect?
About the what?
The reproductive aspect.
No, but I thought that the various situations I presented made it interesting. Like this one does this and that one does that, and look at their circumstance.
As far as the plot goes, the way it was progressed, I wanted to hear the story about Eve. I mean, the characters. I want to hear about Eve. I want to hear about Charlie. I want to hear about Finn. I wasn't really interested in Charlie's baby. I mean, they could have said at the start, she's pregnant. They'd been fine with me.
Well, I got tired of hearing about the car, too. I mean, the car this and the car that.
And, all this angst over and over and over again. Angst over Rose, angst over the little problem, angst, over and over and over and over. You know, it's like the 2-sentence description. That's all you need. And, you know, that's the way.
I had to look up the car so I could see the picture of it.
I meant to look it up, but was it a real car? Is it a real?
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I also was tired of the car. How could I mean, I know that Finn falls in love with Charlie, but his first love is the car. I don't know. Is she gonna be jealous?
I live in a neighborhood where these gentlemen have 3 or 4 old cars in their hangar. I'm sorry, and they love. I mean, if something happened to those cars, they would fall into a deep depression.
Guys love their horses, and people love their dogs, and people love them.
Yeah, so I mean, I had no problem with that.
And when Charlie drove it the first time, she animated it too. It became a real person. You know, it was groaning and it didn't want to go into the town or words to that effect.
Right. Well, so it's a 3-way love story of Charlie, Finn, and the car. So okay.
Now, I don't know that I've really.
Yeah, the car was the other woman.
Apparently, yeah.
I've never met any woman that felt that way about their cars, but I've met several men that literally felt that way about their cars. And like I said, 1 or 2 of them in my neighborhood, it's cars.
I believe it.
They get out every day and fiddle with them one way or the other.
It's cars or guns. You know,
It's cars or guns, and I'd rather cars.
So this is a question that I got from the book. How do you think the ending of the book would be different if Charlie had found Rose alive and well? Did you think Charlie was going to find Rose? Do you think it would have been a better story if she had? Would it be more or less realistic?
Oh, clue me in there. Rose was dead.
Rose was dead.
And clue me in on the nurse that did the abortion that confronted Eve. How'd she get out of being killed?
Charlie had the idea of looking through the court records and discovered that Eve was not the person who had confessed that Lily was the leader of the Alice Network. It was somebody else.
Oh, it was mistaken.
And so Eve had
It was
just.
the last thing I heard. She had been captured Lily and, I hate names. First, Lily and Charlie were, no, Lily and Eve were
Yeah, Lily
talking
and Eve
about,
were-
what's her name, getting caught.
And then
And yet, you know, Eve had met her in the store.
Okay,
The
yeah.
dresser,
So
the-
then in the flashback we see that that Eve and Lily were caught. They were caught. They were trying to sneak across the border on the same passport. And
But what about the woman that,
yeah, I'm getting to her.
Oh.
So then all three of them were in prison. And
okay, I got it.
okay. And
They thought she'd gotten shot, but she didn't.
right. And Eve got to be released from jail, but Renee, he searched her room and found her gun, and he was the one who tied her up, and he was the one who broke her fingers, and that was why she had broken fingers at the beginning of the story. And he drugged her and said that under the influence of the drug, she had confessed that Lily was the head of the spy ring.
Yeah.
So she believed that she had been drugged and forced to confess that Lily was the head of the spy ring, but she didn't really. That had been, it was another prisoner who turned in Lily.
But he held it over her head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a tangle.
And so that was, and then all three of the women were sent to prison. Lily died in prison, and the others.
Well, that's a pretty good plot thing there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good, actually. Resolution, I guess it was.
Yes.
But it's
And
never resolved who actually pointed the finger at Lily.
right. That we don't get any details about. But yeah, they all three were sent to prison. Lily died in prison, and the other two got out of prison at the end of the war. But Violet always blamed Eve for turning in Lily, even though she didn't really.
Why didn't the Germans shoot him?
Because of the bad publicity for the woman they did shoot. That
Germans were worried about bad publicity.
Yes, actually, at that time.
at that time,
Because it was toward the end, and they,
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I get you now.
Yeah.
Okay. They didn't want to be.
right.
At that-
Do it tossing.
at that time, to execute a woman would have been bad publicity.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Which is true. That's one of the historically accurate parts of the story. That there was a woman spy that they caught and executed, and the publicity was so bad that the next time they caught a woman spy, they put her in prison but didn't shoot her. Anyway. But the question about Rose, like, did you think Charlie was going to find Rose? Did you think Rose was going to turn out to be alive?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did you think that Charlie was going to find Rose alive? Or did you
I did.
guess from the beginning that she would be dead?
I did.
Well,
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
A whole lot disappointed.
In the back of my head,
And I would like to know more about Rose, what Rose did during the war.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wasn't sure, but in the back of my head, I kept thinking if Rose had been alive, surely she would have contacted her mother.
Yeah,
Her mother was still alive.
but it was kind of like
Yeah, she would have.
she and her family were at odds.
I thought she was maybe a vegetable in a hospital or a home when you have something horrible to have. I don't know what I thought. But I had a hard time believing if she survived the war, she wouldn't have said, "Here I am, it's over, we're gonna be happy again," or something.
Yeah, I thought she was going to turn out to be alive. Like, because there had been all this groundwork laid at the spies and all that, it was like, oh, of course, Rose is a spy, and that's why she went off the grid. But no, she just died.
Yeah, it had to be a really ingenious situation for us, I think, to make it believable.
Yeah, so I was expecting that, and then when it turned out she died, I was like, oh, well, now-
I've forgotten, do we know how she died?
yeah, in the massacre at the church.
Oh, that's right, with the baby.
You know, that went right over my head. I just now realized that I didn't realize that everybody they knew she was there, and I couldn't put it together. Well, of course, Charlie didn't put it together either. So.
Yeah, they worked at you not being able to put it together.
Yeah, so this question, which I got from the book, would it have been more or less realistic if she had found Rose alive? Yeah, I think probably less realistic just because of the point that, I mean, realistically, she probably would have died.
Yeah.
For her to have survived, that would have been a bit of a
like you said, she would have contacted her family.
Mm-hmm. Or well, maybe not her family, but she was in too many.
Well, one solution could have been by the author. A lot of people I don't know how many, but I've read a lot of things about World War II, and a lot of people came out with amnesia.
Yeah.
So if she'd have gotten amnesia, she wouldn't have known who she was, and she couldn't have contacted anybody. So that would have worked as a plot device.
But that would have been kind of a.
Yeah, that's pretty far-fetched.
Oh.
But there were quite a few that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, it was more psychological shock than hitting the head or something. They just had no idea who they were. Anyway.
Yeah, and there was there was a lot of alcohol and opium and all kinds of other things that probably were not helpful for the amnesia problem. I don't know about y'all. I was cringing in all of the times when people were drinking a lot and then driving, or how much Charlie was drinking and smoking while pregnant. But then I was like, at that time,
This is an all or nothing society. I was thinking about that the other day. If you took 2 puffs of a cigarette a day, I'm not too sure it wouldn't hurt you. There's more than that in the air, But yet, I don't know, people are just so dogmatic. You have, like, I don't walk good. I went to a bar in Richmond Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my first beer. Okay, I decided I had to go to the bathroom. So the local badass says, well, you better made some crack about I was too drunk. Are you driving? Am I going to have to take the car keys away from you? I'm thinking, I've had I walk funny, then I've had a half a beer. If I had 4 beers, I could still start the car and get it around the corner. I might not be able to drive NASCAR, And everybody's just so, you had a beer, you can't drive. You smoke a cigarette, you're going to die. I mean, it's just this dumb, I'm sorry, I'm off on a rant. Never mind.
Take a breath.
Take your time. What they say to me, like I can't not take my time. Like, I'm going to run now. What are you going to do?
They have Tai Chi. They have Tai Chi here.
we do. We have Tai Chi every Tuesday.
I wish. Yeah, you stand and don't move.
No, there's a lot of
sitting.
sitting. There's a lot of sitting.
We have Tai Chi attendees who have mobility disabilities. So
Well, I've tried everything else. I've tried everything else.
very accessible.
My problem is the pelvis is not,
Well, no, a
Correct,
lot
so
of
then-
them sit, a lot of them sit.
it's not a muscle or joint thing, it's the whole chain is screwed up. Well, I'd like to know how to kill somebody.
We don't do that. It's just exercise.
Well, the judge won't let me have a gun.
Good for him.
Be that as it may.
They don't know if you're kidding or not.
Speaking of violent crime, what do you think would have happened if Renee hadn't died when he did? Would he have continued to get away with his crimes?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Would exposing him or going to the police have done any good?
Many times.
Well, if somebody could eyewitness him and figure him that way,
Depends on
if that didn't happen, he was a clever cookie. He'd have slid on right on down the road, you know. But if somebody knew him and saw him and knew who he was and what he did, then that look at how the Jews went after the Eichmann and the guys that bombed,
Right.
bombed the Olympics. I mean, you know, if they want somebody, they'll find them.
Well, that was the Israeli government, so that was, a government.
Well, you had every government in Europe after the collaborators and the Nazis and everything else.
Mhm.
I mean, Eichmann, they got him 20 years after the war. And
Yes.
they're still getting people, I think. They got a guard at Auschwitz a while back.
Right, yeah, so there were governments, and there were like war crimes trials. But for somebody like Renee, who was kind of more on the he was like a low level gangster. Like he was,
I like that.
Right. I mean, like he was a bad guy, but he wasn't. Yeah, he was a collaborator. I mean, it would during the war, the resistance absolutely would have killed him. But
You know, the word I would use to describe Renee was oily.
Oily, yeah.
Oily. That's
Yeah.
what he was. He was oily.
yeah, I wasn't sure.
Slippery and slime.
Yeah, and he kept getting away with it. He kept changing his name, moving to a new town, and he must have had other victims who would have looked for him and wanted him dead. But yeah, I wasn't sure. The fact that he died when he did kind of seemed like, well, okay, he's dead now.
Take care of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
How did he die?
Eve and Charlie went to confront him, and they killed him. Well, he tried to kill Eve, so it was kind of.
I wish they had a shootout at the end.
Yeah, they had a shootout. It was like the way it was set up. He attacked them, so it was kind of like it was self-defense. Like it was set up so that the two women could still be not murderers, But it was
Killers, but not murderers.
yeah. I mean, it was self-defense. But they had the discussion beforehand where Charlie was like, "Oh, we should go to the police," and Eve was not on board with that. And I don't know that the police could have done anything. I don't know because how much of that was a crime? How much was a crime at the time? That's also kind of the iffy aspect of those types of prosecutions. But I was wondering, if they had that picture of him with the Nazis around, if he had been exposed, that's kind of what I was thinking. Would exposing him, would going to the newspaper have been a better option than the police, or would that have had any effect?
I'm not sure you could.
Everybody knew.
Not when he moved. Not when he moved to a new town, new name.
I think the collaborators have.
But he
I'm
would have
not
just
sure you
moved
can
again.
file charges against a collaborator. That was
Yeah.
a
Resistance would have
popular,
gotten him.
Well, yeah.
ostracization or whatever.
Turn him into the resistance.
Yeah, but in 1947 there wasn't a resistance anymore. It was after the war. So yeah, that was kind of that was just a lingering question that I had.
No, he would have just slipped away and
Yeah.
continued.
That's a pretty good ending. Revenge.
Everybody likes a good revenge story.
Now, was Renee the one that broke her hand, or was
Yeah.
that he did it?
He
personally?
did that. He did that
Oh.
because he's a bad dude. Because he found out that she was a spy and
She made a fool of him.
she made a fool of him.
He didn't care about the spine.
Right. He didn't care. Like that was always the thing with Renee. He wasn't like loyal to the German government or whatever. He was in it for himself.
Making money, doing, yeah.
So this was another one that was from the discussion questions in the book. That Finn and Captain Cameron are parallels. Like you mentioned, they had been in prison, and there's a little bit of a relationship between Cameron's relationship with Eve and Finn's relationship with Charlie. So what did you
How do you think they were, these relationships you're talking about, they were not comparable at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's very true.
But
Go on.
it did provide a male interest.
Continue?
That's why it's so hard for me to see them together. Finn and Charlie. They're just, to me, I mean, anybody can get together, well, that's where you find it, but,
No, I think that being friends
or,
if they had continued to be friends or a father figure or something
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
would have been a brother figure
yeah,
or
I
something
can
would have
believe
been
that
more.
better.
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
think
just
they
tired
stayed-
of. I'm
Do you
just
think they
tired.
stayed together?
No, I just don't see the romance, and like I said, I'm tired of the romance.
It did kind of feel like, oh no, every novel is obligated to have a romance. So here's a hot guy that the lead can fall in love with.
Well,
So-
they would have stayed together because back then, divorce wasn't an option.
Or as much of an
Sure,
option.
Sure it was.
As much of
Well,
an
yeah,
option. It
but
was harder.
I mean, good Lord, in my neighborhood, if somebody got divorced, she was a fallen woman, the guy was a cad. It was just,
Yeah, back then, yeah.
that was.
But still,
until
divorce did happen.
Until the sixties, when everything started changing, up until 60,
Yeah,
well,
and
if you got divorced, people look at you sideways.
Well, and it was legally much harder. I think even fairly recently, I think you could, even in some states like New York, you had to have a judge's permission for divorce until just the past few years. But yeah, I mean, I could see them together. It did feel very obligatory. Captain Cameron, I did feel a little weird about the fact that he was a real person. And I know that, like, some of the other characters were real people. Louise de Besniers was a real person, and some of the other people were real people. But Cameron being a real person is, like, really, and the fact that he ran the Alice Network, from Britain, and that he died by suicide, those are the real things. And I kind of was kind of squinty at the author, like, so you just added this whole thing where, like, he's running around on his wife, and
well, maybe she did. Maybe he did run around.
I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying it's not in the historical record.
Did they say why he committed suicide?
No. The novel implies that it is because he was unhappily married. In real life, of course, we don't know. Yeah, I wasn't really sure. I was okay with the Fan Charlie romance, other than, as I mentioned, I wish that she had just been a single mom, so I wish that maybe they would have been friends. But the Cameron Eve romance is just, why was that there?
Why not?
I mean, it didn't really seem like they knew each other.
They had known each other before. They had memories together. He felt responsible partly for her problems, for running the spy thing. So they,
I mean, I get it, but it
No,
just
you don't.
seems. Well, no, I get that. I get why they would be friends and how
well, you
that.
see, that's how I feel about Finn.
Yeah.
I see how they would, but married, nah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they didn't get together romantically except that for that one time, but it just seemed very gratuitous. But that's just me.
They could have been.
So we talked about violence and revenge. We talked about character growth.
Somebody was talking about the apothecary story when I came in.
Oh, we were just comparing the contemporary with the past, sort of
Oh, okay, because Lena
working.
and I,
But yeah, no, the stories were totally different. But that was the connection
But
that.
when I was talking to Lila about it, I had told her, I just didn't care for Charlie at all. Nor did I care for that younger woman in the apothecary story. They just, they carried the youth aspect of it a little too far.
Wait,
I thought.
I'm sorry. Which young woman in the apothecary story? What young woman in the apothecary story?
The one finding all the main
came
character.
from some California.
Became the assistant to the.
Okay, so y'all gave different answers. That's why I asked.
Oh, the young woman who came to, was it London? Haven't gotten up there too much.
Okay, you're talking about the present day
Yes.
Yes.
protagonist?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, she wasn't that young.
She seemed it to me, but as we agreed, or I agreed, that's
Well,
fine.
she was depicted as a child.
That's fine.
No, y'all are talking about.
She was 18, but she was depicted.
No. Y'all. That's why I said y'all gave different answers because one of the.
Charlie or the
No. We're talking about the apothecary.
Apothecary.
One of the
the
characters.
little girl in the apothecary.
No, not the
Earlier.
Let me. That's why I said y'all gave two different answers. One of the characters in The Lost Apothecary was an actual child. She was a 12, 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
But the character that you were calling the young one
Yeah.
was like a 30-year-old woman.
I think she was 30, but
She was.
You mean the little girl when she was grown up?
No. The adult woman.
What young woman was in the apothecary? Oh, well,
In the
the
contemporary
the
story.
one that the husband was cheating and the.
Yes, her.
It gets confusing.
It'd be nice if we could remember their names.
Yeah,
solve the
well,
problem, but,
It would be
you know.
nice for a lot of things.
Yeah, I just don't like two novels trying to work as one novel. To me, they were two separate novels of both books. And
No,
she
I
tried desperately, both authors tried to join them together. To me, it didn't join. It maybe joins for everybody else, but not for me.
The Alice Network joined better for me.
I thought so too. But anyway, circling back, you were saying you didn't like the character of Charlie. I think the apothecary is confusing.
okay. I just saw her, I guess, as a spoiled rich girl.
Well, she was.
And I just couldn't get any sympathy for her.
Well, I mean, she was rich. She didn't have access to her own money.
But she was spoiled.
Well,
Yes, she was.
I mean, she was being railroaded into a forced abortion.
Well, yeah, because she had been kind of left to do as she pleased, and she got herself in a mess, and now she was whining about it.
She wasn't really whining about it, and she had been left to do as she pleased because she was living her own life on her own terms.
She struck me as just completely, to coin a phrase, in the wind. I mean, her brother had blown his brains out. Her father, was distant. He didn't have anything to do with it when she was pregnant. The mother was distant and authoritarian, or at least not warm. And she said many times, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am, blah, blah, blah.
Well, what did she do?
And that's the reason she was steered like a little child. The parents tell a little child what to do, the little child does it. And Mama said, you're going to get a divorce, and then, okay, let's get a divorce. Yeah.
Well,
and she didn't put up a fight.
She didn't put up a fight at first, but later she did.
Well, yeah, she finally found herself.
Yeah,
Before then, she was discombobulated. She didn't know what to do. She's knocked up.
She was being railroaded by her family, who were trying to force her into an extremely traumatic situation.
That's true, but
consider the timber of the times. She was up against the wall to start with. I mean, she couldn't.
We're not talking about that.
What decision could she have made? In 1947, when you're
Well, she did. She did make her own decision in the end.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of, speculatively, what could she have done anyway? In 47.
What she could have done, what she did.
Well, what she did was listen to Mama.
No, she didn't.
Initially, she did.
Initially,
she found her voice. That's
right.
what I was arguing. That's
okay.
What I was saying.
Y'all are agreeing.
Before then, it doesn't matter.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. And so you were saying you didn't find her sympathetic, and I was saying I did find her sympathetic because she was being forced into this terrible situation.
But at that point, she was allowing herself to be forced. She was allowing herself.
At the beginning, yes, but by the end, she was standing up for herself.
Yeah, she grew up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
She grew up. Because in college, she said, I've got these idiot sorority girls around me, and they're all a bunch of snobs, or whatever, however she explained it. So she didn't belong anywhere, really. She didn't belong with her family. The only person she belonged to in the family was James. Well, he killed himself, so now she's adrift there. She's adrift in school. She's got no friends. Nobody wanted to take her out until she started, whatever the term is. I hate to use the term, but anyway, she got popular that way, and then that was it. That wasn't satisfying or fulfilling. So she didn't belong anywhere. She had no identity. So it was easy to turn somebody when they don't have an identity.
Right, that's why I thought she was such an interesting character.
Yeah,
and I loved her.
She developed.
Yeah, I loved her character growth.
She turned into a very self-assured, confident person.
Yeah, and I didn't think she had been allowed to do as she pleased at all. Quite the opposite. She lived a very controlled life until she took charge of her life.
Okay, I have a question totally different from this.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan, are novels like this coming out about the war and surviving the war? And
you mean there's a novel?
Yeah.
Is there a few?
Is there the same
Well,
trend?
there was a book called Unbroken by whatever her name is. She wrote Seabiscuit.
Okay.
And she describes, and it's all true.
You were in
Now, I
Japan.
think I talked about it.
Were you in
Going
Japan?
through the World
Yeah.
War II.
Yeah, you did talk about that.
Were you in Japan during World War II?
Yes, I was born in Japan.
Yeah, but were you
Yes, I was 5 years old.
what was it like?
Well, that book describes it.
But anything
Oh, yes,
specific?
I do remember. But
That's
it has
what I'm
nothing to
asking.
do with this fiction book. I'm talking about nonfiction.
Yeah, but I'm asking you a personal question. I'm curious as to what you remember about it.
But there are lots of things I remember because it
Give
was
me
so
one.
catastrophic.
I'm begging, give me one.
We don't harass our book club
I
members.
don't think to harass, I just was
No,
curious.
if she doesn't want to discuss it,
Okay,
then we
that's
won't.
fine.
Well, I did discuss it, I'm sure Dan
Well, that's
remembers.
okay, I just was
Yeah.
asking. It's
Yeah,
none of my
my
business.
mom was widowed, she was taking care of my brother who was 4 years older, and then and here, you know, it's too long to tell you in a
Okay.
nutshell in 5 minutes. Just,
I'm an honorable person, I don't want to bother anybody that doesn't.
well, no, it's an experience I would never forget, even though I was very little. I can still remember. You know, some things you just, I don't know why you
The
remember
thing,
something.
I don't know if this is just my impression, or if there's some accuracy behind it. But in what I was talking about with the books that have come out over the last decade, so many of them have been about the European aspect of the war. Like everybody's fascinated with the European aspect of the war. And a lot of authors are writing about it.
Especially France. There have been
Yes.
so many books
Yes.
set of World War II France.
Yes. But I mean, in my memory, I can't think of one that, you know, kind of is a fictional portrayal of the war in Japan.
But this one was. It's called Unbroken. You have to, it's a thick book. And I
But it's
found
not
it very
fiction, is
fascinating.
it?
Huh?
It's not fiction?
It's nonfiction.
That's what I thought.
And the author, I can't remember her name, she wrote Sea Biscuit. You know,
Okay.
about the horse.
Yes.
I saw the movie. Yeah,
No, but I was just thinking, you know,
good movie.
in the United States, at least, or in this group of people, that seems to be, you know, there's a whole lot of people fascinated with this whole war in Europe.
Yeah.
But very little attention is paid. Not that we don't know anything about it, but very little attention seems to be paid to that aspect of the war.
Well, and Middle East, there was war over there in World War II. Do you know anything about it?
Or in Africa.
In Africa?
Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah, we
a
know
world war, yeah.
Well, you know, I didn't even realize that the Allies invaded the south of France. All I knew about was Normandy.
Huh.
And they invaded the south coast of France. I don't know which town it was, and came up through France from the south. I didn't know. All I knew was Normandy.
Oh,
So there's a lot that you don't. Y'all hear about Normandy all day long, but I know you never hear about the thrust from the south.
Speaking of spies and the like, I saw a movie, I go to the senior center in Savannah, and one of the classes they offer is that they have a series of related movies, and then you watch the movie and then talk about it. Kind of like we read the book and then talk about it. And the one last week was, the picture was a spy, and it was about Mo Berg, the pitcher. And he was a spy in toward the end of World War II. He was brilliant. He was totally, and he had all kinds of degrees. And he just got, I mean, he loved baseball the same way he loved studying.
A spy for whom?
Us. And he finally went to the OSS, which was the prefect of the CIA. And he went to the OSS, and he said, they sent him to, they sent him to Japan for a playoff, a demonstration game, baseball. And he went around and he took pictures of and this was before they were even an actual part of the war. And he took pictures of the harbor, and he took pictures of this building and the pictures of that building, and he on his own. And because he had talked to this one guy, this Japanese guy that was part of getting the game together about, they met at a bar, and he said, how do you think things are going in Japan? And the guy said, it's heading that way. I'm afraid it's heading that way. And so he went around and took all these pictures, and when he got back to the States, he went to the OSS and said, I have these pictures. And then they got in touch with him because of the things that he studied and the kind of person he was. And they had discovered, of course, that Germany was working on the atomic bomb like we were. And they said, go and see this one guy, not Oppenheimer, but I can't think of his name, long name. And there's some kind of Heisenberg. And I knew the Heisenberg principle, but they went to Heisenberg. They said, we hear that he's working on the bomb, and we need to know how serious he is, because a lot of his friends left Germany, and came to the United States, and they tried to get him to come, and he wouldn't come. He stayed. How far along is he helping them with the bomb? See if you can find out. And if you find out he's helping them, can you kill him? And he said, yes.
All right.
Because he was a little bit of a
What did he find out from Heisenberg?
well, he said, well, how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to talk to him? How am I? And they said, he will say something that will register with you, and you will know. And so he talked to him, and he came to the conclusion. He went to one of his speeches, and Moberg was smart enough that he could follow pretty much what he said. And he thought, he's dragging his feet.
He's what?
Dragging his feet.
Yeah. That's what I heard.
And so afterwards, he went and talked to Heisenberg. And Heisenberg wouldn't give him a straight answer, but he gave him enough of an answer that he had he decided not to kill him.
Yeah, that's what I read, that Heisenberg stayed with Germany, and he was going to be for Germany, and then as it developed, he wasn't his heart wasn't in it.
No, he never left Germany. So he was for Germany, not for Hitler.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But and like you said, dragging his feet was exactly what the perfect way to say it. He just wasn't in. He wasn't, and they couldn't get any heavy water anyway. But
Yeah. But that was a great movie. That was a great
I like
movie.
to see that.
Yeah.
I used to read. I still do try to, but when you read about that subject, you read about the people, Einstein, and all the rest of them, and their lives are so interesting. Their lives are more interesting than the subjects, really.
Well, that is interesting, and we have recommendation group next week, so we're running really long with book club. But if you want to come recommend, I think that the point that you made about that there's not as many works about other aspects of World War II is interesting.
Well, maybe we consider it open like Washington.
I've already done it one time.
Yeah, but do it again because some of us
Yes.
weren't there.
Yes,
Some of us
I think that would be a great resource or something that we could bring up. So, yes, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having this group.
No, please leave the chairs as they are.
Oh,